quorum yet. Okay. Great. So for all the attendees who are here, we are waiting for 2 more commission members so that we will have a quorum. We expect them. They're just not here yet.
For whatever reason.
Right. See if we can.
Another reason for us to get another member.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
Carol.
there's Carol. I'll text Dan.
Is Steve back from wherever he went last time?
Yeah, he was here last meeting. For those who are still coming on when Julie said so, we're waiting for 1 more member. We need 4 for a quorum tonight.
Just sent a message to Dan Warchall asking if he's planning on coming.
Hi, Carol.
Hello, sorry folks, I just had to grab a cup of tea.
All right.
We have a quorum, not yet.
Not yet.
Any word on Paul?
I have not heard anything about him not attending tonight, so I would assume that he would be here. I think he was recently at the Community Preservation Act committee meeting, so
Okay, so because last meeting you said you thought maybe he was ill.
well, I don't know. He had been in the hospital and missed 2 meetings, but I have not heard anything about him not being at this meeting. So Steve, do you have, Joe, do you have Steve's? Let me see if I have Steve's number.
I don't know that he has a cell phone, so.
Yeah.
Uh,
Here you go. There he is. Don't need to call
All
him.
right. All right.
uh,
Good deal.
Right.
Steve has arrived. We're trying to send you a text, Steve, but your home phone wasn't taking it.
Oh, yeah, and my cell phone's never on.
Oh, you do have one. Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
I have the number.
Is it charged up at least?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Once a week when I go hiking.
Oh, there you go. All right. In that case, since we're past time, let's bring this meeting to order. It's the May 3rd, 2022 Newburyport Conservation Commission meeting taking place on the Zoom platform, and this meeting's being recorded. First item on the agenda are the meeting minutes of April 19th. But since David did not get a chance to watch the video, why don't we table that until later? And we can vote on them later. Next item, do we have any Plum Island updates?
Only that the next MRBA meeting is scheduled for June 10th at 10 a.m. And we don't have a Zoom link for that yet. I'm assuming it will be over Zoom. All the recent ones have been. When that comes out, I'll make sure that it gets sent to you all.
June 10th at 10, did you say?
June 10th at 10 a.m. Yep, that's a Friday.
And
Why do we think I saw that it was gonna be in person?
Oh, really?
It is in person, June 10th,
Yeah.
10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at
Okay,
Pitt Hall.
At
okay,
where?
great.
Pitt Hall.
Pitt Hall.
Oh, Peter. Okay.
And he usually sends out an agenda ahead of time, so I'll send that to you, but they also pass them out at the meeting. So that'll be good. First in-person meeting there in over 2 years.
Julia, the last time that I was involved, there was going to be a meeting out at Reservation Terrace to discuss possible next steps, if any. And I was wondering if anything came of that.
Is this with regard to the posts being pulled out and the recent
Yeah.
deterioration? Yeah. As far as I know, there has not been an on-site meeting scheduled. We were discussing it. There's been some email conversations with Anders at GZA and others about what to do in terms of maybe putting more posts in, possibly covering the bags with sand again, but I have not yet heard anything further about that. I can check with the mayor's office and make sure that they don't have something scheduled that I just don't know about yet. I'll keep you up to date though. There is.
Okay.
Hi,
Dan.
everybody. Sorry I'm late.
It's okay.
Yeah,
You're here.
thanks.
Okay. Then let's get on with it. That's it, right, Julie?
Yep.
Okay. And there's Paul. Hi, Paul.
Aye.
All right then, first item. Friends of Plum Lighthouse, 263 Northern Boulevard, request for determination.
Okay, let me find Bill Cooper over here. I'm going to promote Bill to a panelist, so he will be able to address the project, which we all heard a little bit about 2 meetings ago in an informal discussion. So Bill, you should probably be able to unmute yourself now if you'd like to talk. And I will bring up, this is the RDA that he submitted. I'll bring up a couple of photos and graphics that describe the project. So
Yep.
as you can see, like,
My name is Bill Cooper, and I represent the Friends nonprofit group that leases the lighthouse from the city. And we want to put an information kiosk up to the north of the lighthouse. You can see in this location here. And we've settled on an approach in terms of how we want to mount it. We want to go deeper in the ground with the 6x6 post. So you have a kiosk. This is a kiosk that Peter had at the center at one point in time. The structure and the roof are in great shape. The display is sort of toast, so we've made new doors out of mahogany and plexiglass, and has a sizable display. It's about 60 by 30 inches display panel on each side, displaying history of the lighthouse and its impact on the Merrimack River and navigation. So it'll be pretty neat. So it's got a cedar shingle roof on it that's 8 feet high and 8 feet across, with a 6x6 structure, which was made to stand above the ground. And we're sistering up 6x6s on the outside of it, and putting those 6 feet into the ground. And
you want me to bring up the most recent plans?
yeah, yep. So that's just what it'll look like. We'll have 6 12-inch long, half-inch galvanized bolts below the cross member, and half-inch carriage bolts above it. So be well fastened together. And we think this thing will be supported this way. We'll well compact the soil and sand around it. So that's my story. We submitted the RDA, and I think that's what we talked about last time. You have any questions?
Could you explain how you're going to achieve the 6 foot deep?
Well, we have a 2-man auger that'll go down to about 56 inches. And I have a couple long spoon shovels that we intend to get deeper. I mean, we may not be able to make it, but you know, that's our goal. So we're gonna dig a couple sample holes first to see how it goes. So
Is there any walkway, or is there any anything as far as leading up to it?
right now, there's not. I mean, we've talked about, you know, around the lighthouse itself, there is a brick walkway that goes circular around the lighthouse, and we sell those bricks as memorial bricks as part of the fundraising, and we might eventually extend that walkway that you see around the lighthouse to encompass the kiosk, but that's something in the future. I mean, this is basically it's a, you know, a poor lawn. I mean, there's not much loam there, so it's, you know, I think basically over, you know, over sand.
We have anything else? Any other questions? All right. Can we get a motion?
I'd make a motion to issue a -2 determination.
Second,
All right, roll call. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
yes.
Ken Warshaw.
Can you repeat what the, I glitched out. I missed the tail end of that. I have no idea where we are.
Okay, can I walk over there?
Go ahead, Paul. Repeat your motion.
No, I made a motion to issue a -2 determination for this project.
I
Yes.
seconded it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm a yes vote on that.
Okay. All right, David Vine,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thank you, Bill.
All right, thank you, guys.
Well, I will send that to you in the mail and by email as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, next item, City of Newburyport, 59 Low Street, request for determination.
I'm going to promote Kim Turner to a panelist, as well as Tom Hughes to present this project. Oops. I don't know what happened to the agenda document, but let's just go straight to the RDA.
Great,
All right.
thanks, Julia. Hello again, Kim Turner, Manager of Special Projects in the Mayor's Office, here tonight to introduce to you somebody who will be presenting this RDA. So we were before the commission a couple of months ago. A quick background is that the city did wind up purchasing at the time 57. It's now been reallocated 59 Low Street. The parcel that is under consideration has just been carved out of the larger parcel, so it's now renumbered 59 Low Street at the beginning of the year, with an eye towards potential use for youth services. The Conservation Commission has never reviewed a site plan or wetland line for this property in the past in association with any project. That, combined with the fact that the previous flagging was done 3 years ago in 2019, it made sense to us, before we moved forward with any sort of development plan, to reflag the wetland without judgment. We discussed that at the last the last time I was with you, and we're sort of given indications that it made sense to follow that process. The city has since hired Tom Hughes Environmental Consulting, who has done that flagging work and submits the plan tonight. And again, just looking for the RDA to set that wetland line in place so that we may move forward with the design of the property for the city. And then obviously, as the design is being developed, we'll have to come forward with a full notice of intent at that time. So I'm going to hand it over to Tom, if you're ready, to present your findings so far.
Tom, your mic's off.
Thank you. All right, there we go. Good evening. Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting. Here on behalf of the city to go over the wetland delineation at the site. Before we move into the rest of the RDA, actually, Julia, if you could zoom in on that photo that's actually on the cover there.
Yep.
A little bit. As you guys know, this property was owned by the Guard, and one of the things I wanted to point out to you, in understanding site hydrology, you have to understand how the Guard used this property. It appears to me that the hydrology originally started with a swale between the two portions of the Guard property right along in that area exactly. And you can see all the vehicles and equipment that was parked there. And over the years, what that seemed to do is essentially flatten out the ground, compress it in that area, and spread out the hydrology from that swale and extend it almost all the way over, and in some places right up to the parking surface. The same type of thing happened in the back of the building, although they didn't park as many vehicles in the back. You can see one in this photo right here, which is like a 2005 photo. And what I was trying to understand, I went back through some of the aerial photographs, because as I looked at the old delineation that we were redoing, some parts of it didn't make sense to me with the soils and what I was seeing. And I actually had visited the site in putting together my proposal for the city back when there was still a little bit of snow cover. And what became obvious to me is some of the wetland areas that were flagged behind the building were in areas that I call Michelin Wetlands. They were essentially parallel stripes, which were old tire ruts where water had collected. So you had sedges and rushes and things like that within those ruts. But they were sort of like minor wetland inclusions within a broader wetland or upland context over there. On the side of the building where you see all that equipment, the amount of equipment storage really dominated. And so there's very little areas of sort of upland within a wetland that are the result of the same parking of equipment. So if we can zoom back out full page and maybe go down past the form, we all know where the site is. We can go to this. So when you look at the site, and to give you an idea how my wetland line compares to the wetland line that was done prior, my flags D1, D2, D3 up to D4 are further upland than where they had flagged. I found clear hydrology, wetland vegetation, soils that were marginal, but given the clear hydrology and the wetland veg, I really had no choice but to flag those areas as wet. So that is a little bit higher up and results in a loss of some upland from the prior delineation. My flags from there down to about D8 more or less follow the old line. At that point, though, I deviate. They had gone back into the area behind the building, capturing an area where stormwater runoff runs off the back of the parking lot and kind of collects within these tire ruts back there. But there's a clear soil break along the line where you see my flags D10 through D14. There's a vegetation break in that area, and there's really no connection to those areas that are kind of rutting and all that to the main wetland. So my line actually goes back to the fence line and follows the fence line along. There's a clear vegetation break. You've got bittersweet and multiflora rose, two species that like to be near wetlands, but not in them. And then right on the other side of the fence, there's about a 2-foot vertical drop down into the main body of the wetland. My flags, F1 through F3 up at the top there, round out around an upland area that wasn't captured in the prior delineation. For simplicity's sake, since it wasn't really critical laying a buffer zone down on the property, I essentially connect from F3 to my D1 through the old wetland line, and on F1 connect to the old wetland line into the wooded area, because I don't see us doing anything back there. And when I took a look at where those flags were located, they seem to be pretty accurate. My flag D14 connects to 3 of the old flags that run off property and parallel to that property line up to about where the corner of the building is, but it's off property. And without permission of that property owner, I would prefer to use the old flags. I did look at them from a distance, and it was pretty obvious that they were following pretty decent hydrology. But in the end, I mean, I think that my line is a good one out here. There's clearly bright soils. I gave you some pictures in my report of the soils along that fence line that clearly separate out any areas, sort of spotty areas of wetland vegetation in that area behind the building that had previously been flagged. And like I said, I expanded in another area where I really, what I saw clearly met the definition, state definition of wetlands. I feel pretty good about the line. I did send over, it was fairly last minute, but we've actually added all these flags onto a plan with the old flags to kind of tie them all together. There is one slight correction we need to make, which is that the buffer, if you look at the end of my line in the back, sort of back corner, right in that area, yes. Up where my D14 is, up at the top, it actually then should connect off property and follow like 3 flags kind of parallel in there. So those buffer lines would come up in that area, and we can get you a corrected version of that plan. But this gives you, how everything connects together with the old wetland flagging. And I think this is a line that reflects, the actual science and soils, vegetation, hydrology of the site. And the most important thing is that we just lock in a line from a regulatory point of view, so the city doesn't waste money doing design work and then having the wetland line impact it later. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the work I did, about the line, about any of the other items. I can pull up. Julia, do you have the old line?
I do. It's right here.
If you can open that, I just want to point out, if you see those flags A1, A2, A3, up in that same corner I was just talking about.
Yes. Yep.
So A1,
A2.
you're right. So my line at A3 is about where my D14 is, and it just needs to connect to A2 and A1. That's the one thing we need to update with you guys.
Yep. So that then the buffer zone wraps around similarly.
Right. It wraps up.
Yep.
So Tom, it looked like from the previous diagram that there's cars parking on the wetlands, the land that you've.
Yeah.
wet?
So this was first of all, it likely was not wetland when the guards started parking where they parked. But they were, if you look at the cover again, this is 2005 National Guard. For any of you who are familiar with the area and have been around, we all know we've driven by back in the day and saw, military vehicles parked all over that property. And what they were doing is, sometimes doubling up vehicles, parking right up. You can see some vehicles that are actually parked in what is now a swale. And likely all of that pulling equipment on and off compressed the ground and essentially expanded the drainage swale to create the broader wetland complex that we have. That essentially starts as a swale, broadens out with my wetland line to get right up against the parking area. And then that kind of flows down through a gate in the fence, which is a low spot. And And you know, at this point, though, there are no longer vehicles. Now the city owns it. The vehicles are not parking in the wetland. You know, that's no longer happening, but it's important to see this image to understand why the wetlands are where they are and why that area in the back. I think the earlier delineator sort of just saw some sedges and rushes and didn't look at the broader context or the soils between that area and the main wetland. And it's possible the hydrology's changed a little bit too, but I spent a lot of time plugging away at the soils to really get a sense of what was going on there. And I did visit the site with Julia and Kim after I'd done my sort of preliminary work to get a sense of, you know, to give them a sense of where I was at with the delineation.
So, Tom, with your delineation, the 25-foot no disturb zone would go into the existing parking lot. Is that correct?
Yes, as it would with the earlier one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. With that respect, my, you know, if we probably go to the plan that you got today, Julia, the one that looks more like a plan. This has got the 25. The only place where the 25 and 50 are inaccurate is in the, in that back left area. It would come into the building possibly on the back corner, because the wetland line just kind of comes up into the neighbor's yard and then disappears away from the site. But yeah, that 25 portion has not changed from in the area where it comes into the parking. Where I extended it, the 25 is out of the parking just barely. But as you go down where our delineations are in common in that area, both delineations had that 25 and 50 coming into the parking area.
And the original delineation on the, I'll say the left side of this, that one, Julie, can we go to the other delineation?
Sec. Whoops, sorry, I knew that was gonna happen. Let me get back to here. I have to wait till my menu goes away. Now I can, oh, every time I go to click on the, sorry, just give me one more minute. There.
So now the 50-foot buffer on, it's now the upper left there. Because I see like wetland flag 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Right.
Up way out.
Yeah.
Right. So what they did is they went down and then they came back along the edge of some of those tire stripe areas.
Okay.
And captured those. And they did not, I don't think they looked carefully at the soils in that area of 11, 10, and then along the fence line. So those areas, there are definitely pockets of wetland in that area of the of that sort of polygon there, but they're intermixed with upland areas. The soils, like you can pull a soil plug and go over 5 feet, and pull a soil plug, and they're different from the prior disturbance. And it's pretty clearly from equipment parking and storage, in addition to some of the runoff from the parking area. But then as you go in the area right along that fence line and coming out 5, 6, 7 feet, there's upland soils along that whole stretch.
Okay.
So that's the reason for the difference in that area. And, you know, so in my delineation, my wetlands are a little bit larger in the area, you know, up closer to the road where that sort of swale-like thing begins. And then it's different in that area. I just disagree that that's a jurisdictional wetland in that area, you know, bounded on their polygon there by A10 through A5.
Okay.
Tom, there's no issues with anything along Low Street as far as impacting the site per wetlands?
Yeah, this is not an area that has a roadside swale or anything like that. No.
Okay.
And if you see where their A1 is on that I'm holding, right? Because that's off property and, you know, without permission, I'm not going to go over there, especially when it's not really necessary. That will shed a perfectly accurate buffer over. From there, it just goes away and back down. So it doesn't continue towards Low Street.
So Tom, in this plan, there are wetland flags along Low Street. Is that correct?
In the,
There's a C1 and a D1 and.
oh, are they, so they're off property, but they actually coming into a swale right there? I will,
Well, there was, I remember when we had a joint meeting with the council, there was a huge amount of discussion about the wetland along Low Street.
Right.
right,
Yeah.
you know something, I looked at that briefly and I didn't see anything that jumped out at me, but I'm assuming you guys want to do a site visit. So on that bit there in particular, what I can do is I can get out there. You know, I don't know if it's going to rain tomorrow, but I can get out there in the next day or two. And if there's something in that area that I missed, we would certainly flag it. I was spending most of the time in that area in the back and on the left there. So
I believe there is a swale along the road on Low Street.
is there? And okay, I didn't
Just
see
north
it.
of there, just north of there, and then I believe it's culverted under at a certain point.
Right.
But it's, you know, I would consider it, we should go take a look at it, but we've been working under the assumption that it's actually a man-made drainage swale, roadside drainage swale.
Right.
But let's take a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, so if it is a typical drainage swale, the way I look at it is it's jurisdictional for conveyance of water, sort of as an intermittent stream. But you guys have always held that, you know, that's sort of it for limited jurisdiction for how you apply the regs.
Right, because we just want it to continue to serve the stormwater function and be
Right.
maintained as such, and
Right.
therefore not be an impediment.
But it'd be nice to clarify that for the council because they spent an inordinate amount of time talking about that.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, no, I will absolutely take a look at that and, you know, and if it requires flagging, it will have flagging, but it is an area just as within the industrial park, it appears to be that is a swale that I missed up in there. And if it is, it's strictly, you know, the way you apply the jurisdiction in the industrial park makes the same sort of makes sense to do the same thing on this when we get into permitting, but we can look at that. I would say that what you're seeing is likely accurate. I mean, a wetland scientist did go out and look at that and they put flags up, but they may also have not been familiar with how you guys treat the stormwater swales.
Yeah.
Didn't John Eric refer to that as country drainage?
Yes.
Well, and what is country drainage? It is a conveyance of
Yeah.
stormwater, right?
Right.
And what are streams? Conveyances of stormwater. So it's jurisdictional. It's just not, you know, basically the presumptive function, value, et cetera, that you guys have been protecting it for is essentially to make sure that nobody impedes the conveyance of the water through it, at least in my experience. So anyhow, so I apologize for having missed taking a close look at that, and we will certainly do that.
Yeah, I had a question. You know, I guess as part of this, you know, the applicant is wanting us to essentially approve this wetland delineation. But I'm curious why it's being done under RDA.
It's a perfectly valid way of using an RDA, and RDA does allow you to lock in wetland resources. It's sort of an NRAD light, so to speak.
Right.
But it has the same legal effect, and where it's a municipal client, typically what you try to do is not run through municipal funding on more complex permits when you don't need them. An RDA is, and if I were doing it, your typical homeowner, 5 flags or something like that, I might use an RDA for it.
Yeah. Okay, no, I was just curious. I hadn't recalled that.
Right. No, an RDA, if you look at the application, can be used to confirm resource areas and whether.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
But it's good for a shorter period of time, right?
Right,
Yeah, I mean, it's 3 years.
3 years rather than 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it was a really complex wetland layout, we probably wouldn't want to accept it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that we can provide you with everything
Yeah.
through the RDA process. It's just the ANRAD. Honestly, the biggest difference is the ANRAD has more fees and takes more time to put together. And, and the city is fee exempt, so you're not really losing anything on the fee end.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So my question is, if we want to go do a site visit, not gonna vote on this tonight, are we? If
No.
there's, yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
So-
Well, we wanted to resolve the swell situation anyway.
Yeah.
So I've got a question about the 25-foot no disturb. Maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but if we don't allow them to use that 25-foot no disturb zone, there's not a lot of property left.
Why don't we go to the other, this is the old delineation.
Right.
Go to the, if we're gonna discuss that, we should look at that one.
But that 25-foot no disturb zone is pretty much disturbed. So it's not like we're losing a lot of wetland.
Right.
But is there anywhere on the property where you could mitigate that? I mean, we can't just say, forget about it.
Well, so granted, we are here tonight to talk about the delineation and not sort of the application of your ordinance to the site, but this site has a number of really good opportunities to improve ecological function. You have along the fence, you have almost 100% invasive plants. There are invasive plants out back. There certainly could be a mitigation protocol set up with that. There's no stormwater management to speak of. So adding any stormwater management to the site is going to improve ecological function. And where the 25 does clip into existing gravel areas, it is disturbed already. And, I would put to you that I don't think the intent of the regs was to apply a no disturb to an area that's already disturbed as much as it was to preserve what buffer was left. And on those ones where you already had a disturbed buffer was to try to foster some level of mitigation to improve the site, but not necessarily grab back the entire 25. And I think that's consistent with how you've treated other projects and, private projects in town. And I don't think the city should be treated any different than the private folks. So in this case, what I would put to you is I think it would be fine to reuse the parking area and reuse the building footprint and all that, even if the 25 and 50 come into them. But we have plenty of opportunity for invasive control, plantings and things like that down along the fence line there. But that has to, that's something, and, Kim, I'm sure would have some ideas that she's already thought of. We haven't spent a great deal of time talking about how we would mitigate for something on site. This has been more about getting the resources locked in, but, Kim, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, no, I think you're right on, Tom. We've more been focused on sort of flagging the wetland line and not really getting too far ahead of ourselves on site development. But yes, I mean, when you and I met on site with Julia, it seems like there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. At the very least, we'd want to mitigate some of the invasive species in there, which are starting to creep into the wetland in the rear part of the property, and we want to get control over that. So yeah, I agree with you, but we haven't taken a hard look at that yet.
There was some discussion at a previous meeting when was more focused on what was going to be the use of the building, I think, but they talked about possibly having something outside along the wetland area as an educational display to, if the youth services does end up using that building so that they could understand more about the environmental impact.
Well, of course, you're speaking my language as a landscape architect. I would love to provide any sort of public education on wetlands or other resource areas or ecological systems. But, you know, again, we're not there yet, but
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I
these
see.
are all great. These are all great inputs from the commission.
I was just thinking of if that's still on the table, and I haven't heard if it is or not, but that would also probably speak to what some of the other issues about how far they can go and where the what's going to happen with the wetlands.
Right. I mean, the way typically we would do this is once we get the wetland agreed to with the commission, then, you know, the determination is issued, locking that in, then the city can go about evaluating the use and the design and the improvements to the property. And in that, sort of look at, okay, here's where the impacts are, here's where we can mitigate. And all of those things, I think, are all tools in the toolbox. And I think we just have to figure out what tools fit once we get a better sense of what the program for the site is. But the step one is to get the wetland line locked in so that the city has some assurance that they're not burning through money on design on something that then gets torn apart later with the wetland line changing.
Mhm. Okay, anybody else?
I think we should set it, could we take a minute right now to talk about a time for a site visit?
Mhm.
Would it be worthwhile, I mean, scheduling a site visit at our convenience, but also inviting the council so that they can come out and maybe deal with some facts?
We can always do that.
I can tell you that I've been presenting every step of the way to the council with, for various reasons, like allocations of funding to hire an architect to look at the interior of the building. They are very much aware that this meeting is going on tonight. But I leave it up to the commission as to whether they want to issue a formal invitation to the council.
I think, well, there are a number of new counselors that perhaps have not been out to the site. Maybe that's, you know, it might be worthwhile inviting them. They can decide whether to come or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to figure out when we can go there and then certainly send something to the council president and she can pass it on to.
I would just
So-
want to make it clear that this site visit is not to discuss, because I know how things can get messy and the city councilors are not necessarily as interested in the details of wetland delineation and soils and things like that as they are in what's going to happen on the site. And I would hesitate to allow a site visit on this delineation, which is just very narrowly focused in scope, to turn into a more political or broader discussion of future use and design of the site, because we don't want to, that's not the intent of this, and that will come down the road and there'll be public meetings for that purpose later.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, we can make that clarification.
And I would point out for the site visit that days are now nicely longer. And next week being an even week means I don't have any hearings next week. So any evening next week, early evening, might work well with people's work schedules, and it's something I can accommodate without having hearings next week.
Okay,
Wednesday, any late afternoon is good for me next week as well.
yeah, Monday, Tuesday, I don't think I can go Wednesday, or maybe after 5:15 on Thursday. But
Let's shoot for Monday or Tuesday.
Monday, please.
Yeah, Monday works
Okay.
better for me too. Okay.
Okay.
Monday works for me.
What
What-
time?
Yeah.
I'm clear all day, so
Yeah.
whenever people want.
What works for you, Tom?
After 5 or later, please.
5:30?
5:30?
5:30 would work fine for me. Kim, is that okay with you?
There's a city council meeting on Monday night at 7, so that might be challenging, although 5 could possibly work for me. I don't know about the council.
5:15? 5?
I've,
Does 5 work for you, Dan? Or is that too early?
Yep, no, that's fine.
5, all right, and
All right, 5.
5 on Monday.
Okay. So with that, unless there are any additional questions or I can't see who's in the audience, but if there's anybody out there that, I don't know if you're gonna call in folks, but
Yeah, at this point, we're gonna, this isn't a public hearing, so we're gonna just
okay.
move on and get over to, well, get into our public meeting.
Right. So with that, I guess what I would ask is a continuance, and I will see you guys all on site next Monday at 5. And I think it's going to rain tomorrow, but I'll get by and I will look at that swale area. And if it needs flags, it will get flags and I'll pick them up and they will be added to the plan before Monday. And I'll circulate that through Julia.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Can I get a motion to continue this to the next meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, Paul Haley,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
yes,
Carol Wagon.
Yes.
I vote yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to open the public hearings?
I move we
So
open the
moved.
public hearings.
Second.
dead heat.
Really,
Roll call, Paul
competition.
Haley,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes,
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes,
Carol Wagon.
Yes.
I vote yes. First item is Raymond R. Kingman, 1075th Street, notice of intent. They have requested a continuance, Julie.
Yes, to the next meeting, which is May 17th.
so moved.
Second.
All right, roll call, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes,
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
yes,
Carol Wagon.
Yes.
I vote yes. All right, next item is Michael and Michelle Ewick, 11 Florist Street, notice of intent, continued from 4/19/22.
Yes, okay, so Matt Steinell of Millennium Engineering represented the applicant on this project 2 hearings ago when the hearing was opened. The project, he's unable to attend tonight. He had a conflict, as did Lisa Mead, who's the legal counsel on the project. So another representative of her office is here, who I will move over, and that's Ben Taylor. I'm going to promote Ben to a panelist in case there's any questions that he can answer. But I'll just start by giving a brief sort of review of what happened at the first meeting and where we are today. So this is the site. It's at the end of Flora Street on the basin side of Plum Island. And this is the existing structure. This is the sort of driveway and walkway. The project involves construction of an addition to the single family house over this existing back deck, and then an addition of a new deck off to the side. It's in the AE flood zone with a base flood elevation of 9, and all of the proposed new structure will be at or above elevation 13.5, I believe. And so that puts it actually also above the 40 inches of sea level rise by 2070 that our regulations require for land subject to coastal storm flowage. So that's the site. At the first hearing, there was some discussion, and we had a site visit as well. Or no, we didn't have a site. I went out to the site, but and looking at the photos, there's a large area of mulched sort of landscaped garden along this side. There's some grass over here, and then this is all dune grass. Here's the site plan, and they've revised. So The reason why this, if you remember, this project was continued from 2 hearings ago, is because, wait, let me just zoom in on this. Here you can see, this is the existing house, back deck, etc. This is the mulched landscape area. And then if we pan over to the proposed, this is the proposed, which is an enclosed space over the existing deck and then a proposed side deck. And they've now revised, this is a revised site plan, which shows a removal of the mulched landscape area and replacement with dune grass and native plantings. And that was in response to the commission's request. There's also additional dune grass that will be planted in some of the bare areas out back. And that was in response to some comments at the first hearing. The reason why the first hearing, well, one of the reasons why the first hearing was continued was because we were waiting for the response from the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. We hadn't received their letter of determination yet, whether or not this would be a take of endangered species habitat. We've since received that letter, which I have. It's not, they approved the project. Then in addition, this needed to go through zoning at the same time. So they said, well, let's see if there's any changes that the zoning board might want them to make that would affect the project. Since we have to wait for the natural heritage letter, let's just continue the meeting, make sure there's no changes. In the meantime, after the meeting was continued, DEP issued some comments on the project where they requested that the project address the Riverfront Protection Act standards. Typically on the basin side of the island, we do not review projects in light of the riverfront standards because we consider the basin to be a separate piece, a separate water body, and it's not actually part of the Merrimack River. It's never been brought up that it shouldn't be looked at that way until now. DEP is asking that we consider this part of the basin as a riverfront. So rather than dispute that with DEP, the applicant went back and he put the riverfront area line on the plan. So you can see this is the 100-foot inner riparian zone, and then the outer is further out. So the whole site is in the riverfront area. And they also revised the narrative in the notice of intent to address the riverfront area standard as well, which is going through scope of alternatives, proposed use, technology, and essentially they've met all the riverfront area standards. This is an addition to an existing house. It's not a new development. They're not impacting any new area of dune or riverfront area that wasn't already developed before. So it was really sort of a formality that they went through this process of addressing these riverfront area standards, which they did and submitted it to DEP along with the revised plan. So that's where we are today.
Just a
And
quick question on that. Did DEP have any further comments on the submittal?
nope, they did not. So it
I
was
mean,
those,
after the second submittal,
Right.
the revised submittal, nothing.
nothing, not yet. So hopefully they'll be okay with it. And I would be shocked if they had any issue with that, because it clearly and easily meets all the riverfront area standards.
Yeah.
You know, the dune standards are much more rigorous on Plum Island than the riverfront area standards would be. So that's typically why we focus on the coastal dune performance standards, because there's just so much more difficult to address. And they've done that, you know, in all categories on this project. So also this is construction, this area, if you remember, is their proposed construction access way. So they'd be coming off with construction equipment because the site is narrow and there's a slope here down to the wetland. They'd be coming off the end of Flora Street and they're going to build a temporary like wooden sort of boardwalk access way to get over the vegetated area without disturbing it too much with tires and ruts and all that, to get back to this area, which is where they will conduct the construction work. And they've put detailed specifications in the narrative about how that will be done.
Okay. With regards to the riverfront requirement from DEP, are in the future, we're gonna need to make sure people include that in their submissions?
Yeah, my guess is that because they've done it on this one, and Alicia Galen, who's the new circuit rider for the Northeast region at DEP, is the one who made that comment. My guess is she'll make that comment on others as well. When Matt Steinell responded back to her that he disagreed and told her why he disagreed that the basin should be considered riverfront, she didn't have she wasn't necessarily looking to entertain that idea. So,
Okay.
I mean,
Well, yeah,
I
there's that.
think, right. So I think we will see it again. I think we should be prepared to at least ask the question. In the meantime, I would like to discuss it with DEP directly, because in reading the Riverfront Protection Act and the definition of riverfront, the definition of river, it is absolutely debatable as to whether or not the basin would be considered part of the Merrimack River rather than its own sort of connected water body. We'll see how that plays out, but
Okay.
If you
Just
go back
addition-
150 years ago, it was.
right. Maybe that's what she's
Right.
linking it to. Who knows?
Seems like it would be much more of an issue around like Reservation Terrace, which is clearly on the mouth
Yes.
of the river.
And she did issue the same comments to 1050 75th Street, because that is on the riverside, very much so along Reservation Terrace. And Tom had to pause and go back and address those riverfront standards. You know, that's a more more difficult issue to address over there. So yeah, that goes.
Okay. We have anything else? All right. In that case, anybody from the public have any questions on this project? Raise your digital hand if so. Seeing no digital hands raised. What do we want to do?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second,
All right, roll call. Paul Haley.
I'll abstain since I missed the last two meetings.
Okay, all right, yep. In that case, Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshaw,
yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, thank you. Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
All right, getting a motion to close the public hearings.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, Paul Haley,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshaw,
Yes.
Dave Vine,
yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So our last little item is enforce, well, no, I'm sorry, let's do orders and conditions first.
Mhm.
So I have, I have a draft, special standard and special conditions for 11 Flora Street that you all can take a quick look at and vote on. This is all our boilerplate special conditions. And then we get to the special conditions. And these are kind of all of the ones that we put in on Plum Island projects. Put in here, that the limit of work shall be demarcated with snow fencing prior to the start of work, and erosion controls in the temporary construction access boardwalk shall be installed as depicted on approved plans and described in the notice of intent project narrative. Because I think that's a really important piece that gets in there prior to any work on site. And then it's basic stuff about nothing to be stockpiled on dune grass. Any vegetation disturbed must be replaced. turf grass, no turf grasses, no alteration of topography. Lowest horizontal member must be at least 2 feet above grade. We've also put in here that no lattice or other enclosures to be installed around the home or decks pilings, but left completely open, no concrete footings, et cetera, et cetera. So that's basically it. Two growing seasons of monitoring for all the plantings, and then certificate.
Should we have it in here that they're gonna remove the mulch? Or,
I didn't put in specifically that condition because they revised the plan to show that. So they have to adhere to the approved plans, but I can still add that as a special condition just to make it extra clear.
Was that added to the narrative for the project?
It's not in the narrative. No, it's just on the revised site plan. So do you want me to put that in writing?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay. Okay, so we'll say that the mulched landscape area at rear of site shall be replaced with native plantings, clean beach grade sand. They did put a note in the construction. Actually, I think it is there is a specific note in their construction document. Maybe it's in the revised. Let's see. Yes, they say so plywood surface. Contractor shall, let's see. Yeah. Begin installation of native shrubs and dune grass mitigation area by cutting existing sod and appropriately disposing of material in accordance with federal, state, and local requirements. Low areas resulting from sod removal shall be shimmed using appropriate dune quality sand material. So they didn't actually say specifically to remove the mulch. So I will put that in. Applicant shall replace mulched landscape area with native plantings and beach grade sand as described on approved site plan.
and maybe all mulch will be removed from the island, or,
Okay. 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 All mulch removed. Dispose of all. Okay.
I'm sure you have some language that covers this as far as them putting the plywood down, and then I see it's being removed, but if there's any disturbance at that point, it'd have to be replanted.
Yeah, I can make it more specific to that area. I can add something that's more specific to that area. We always have something in here about any areas disturbed, vegetation disturbed must be replaced. Any vegetation on site disturbed due to construction activities shall be replaced with suitable native species for the environment. I can add to that special condition. This shall specifically include the area, the access way.
Yeah, any lay down areas or
Yeah.
areas. Have they concluded on a driven piles or helix anchors?
They haven't gotten that far yet. They may be waiting for the contractor to come on board and
Okay, so we still leave that open.
all right, got anything else? Motion,
Motion to issue the order of conditions?
Second.
all right, roll call, Paul Healy,
Abstain?
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Pam Warshaw,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes,
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right. On to 3Q Street. Julie, we got something regarding that? Yep, turn your mic on.
Sorry, I was gonna say we did not get anything regarding that. We were expecting to get the report from the coastal engineer, Lisa O'Donnell, last week. She indicated that she would be getting it to us last week during the site visit. We didn't get anything. Tom didn't hear from her. Apparently she's very in demand and pretty busy. So he got in touch with her today and she committed to getting the report in to him and to the commission by the 10th of May, which is next Tuesday. That's all I've got on 3Q.
All right, just a couple of things I wanted to bring up about 3Q Street, regarding, well, one item, is we really should think about, you know, the blue stone wall, which obviously I'm not a big fan of. We should take into consideration that it is higher than the current wall. And if we approve what's there, you know, to allow that to stay, then we're approving an increase in the height of the wall. So we need to take that into consideration because there are other abutters that if they decide to do something with their walls, you know, how do we limit the height they move it to if we allow something like this to go through? The other thing that really bugs me is the wall that's on city property that Mr. Powers put up. I don't have a big issue with the concrete between the blocks. That can be argued as maintenance. But as far as you know, adding a structure to city property, I do have a big issue with that. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And the other thing with allowing them to do a RDA instead of a notice of intent is really DEP is not going to get they're not going to get a real look at what goes on out there. They'll get a copy of the plan and all that, but they're not going to have any input as to how it's done. So that's my piece on that, and we'll figure it out when the letter comes in and whatever plans they give us come in. I don't know if anybody has any input and they want to talk me off the ledge.
I did just do a DEP webinar was yesterday actually, on enforcement issues, sort of just like a training for, you know, Concom agents. And it was pretty routine stuff, is everything that we do. First you issue a violation, it's all the sort of stuff that we do. But then when it got down to enforcement orders and remedies and things like that, it was really interesting what they said, which is that the goal should be to have all the work done, remedy work done, mitigation work done under the enforcement order. They didn't even talk about RDAs or notice of intent. Essentially, they basically said it's better to get the work done under the enforcement order. You have more strength and power. We've talked about this before. And also one of the things that was interesting, they said a reason why not to have them do a notice of intent is you have to consider whether or not you would approve something like what's on site in that situation under a notice of intent. If the current site conditions are such that the only remedies you can make are, you know, just sort of fixing problems. It's not stuff that you would, I guess what they were trying to say is when you have a violation and you're issuing enforcement and mitigation, that's not typically stuff that you would approve under a notice of intent. It's not the way notices of intent typically get done. And so it was just one of the other reasons why they were saying to just like do things under the enforcement order. It almost made the RDA seem irrelevant. I'm not really promoting one method or another. It was just, I found it interesting, and that was in this webinar just from yesterday.
No, and that's good information to have.
Yeah.
I'm glad you went to that.
Well, and I do think we need to take into consideration any precedents we might be setting. Because obviously the people out there all pay attention to what everybody else is doing. So,
Yeah, it almost seems like we're setting a vehicle up here to get things done without doing notices of intent.
Well, that's a concern that I have too.
Although I don't think that Mr. Drago and Mr. Powers would ever say that this was a process they would want to go through again.
I wasn't really even suggesting them, I was suggesting others.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah. On Jerry Mullins took down that bridge that we asked him to take down a year or so ago, the one at the end of Crow Lane.
Oh, up near the landfill?
Yeah.
Oh, gee, he did something we asked him to do.
Yeah.
Weird.
I don't know if he's going to replace it with something else. And then he left the lumber there. I don't know what his intent is.
Well, we did discuss a different bridge.
Yes, we did. I didn't walk down any further than that to see what else he might be up to. I don't know, Julia, we never got Donna to meet with him, and I assume the current mayor has not.
No, Andy and I talked about this a month or two ago after Mayor Reardon started, put it on his plate as an issue that needed to be addressed. Tried to give him all the detail about it, and I think it rapidly went from, it moved down on the list of priorities in the mayor's office. So I don't think that it's been addressed yet, I'm sorry to say. But we can bring it back up.
Okay. The other thing is, I don't know, Julia, did you get anything from Tom about 159 Northern Boulevard as to what the landscaping plan is there? That
I didn't talk to Tom about that yet. I apologize. I forgot to discuss it with him, but I did go by there. I see what you mean. They're fully moved in. The fence isn't up, the plantings aren't in. So it needs, I'm assuming that they should be planting right now, if not weeks ago. And they haven't started yet. So that is a red flag for me, but otherwise the certificate of occupancy and somebody moving into a property that is, the construction is finished, but the landscaping work has not been finished. That's pretty typical, especially for Plum Island and with these orders of conditions, because often the house is done long before the landscaping will ever have been finished and monitored, and just timing with growing seasons and things like that. So, but I guess, so for me, the real concern is that this is the planting season and they haven't started. So that does make me worried. So I will make a note to reach out to Tom and to Chris Horan about that. Yeah.
my concern is the fencing that defines the property line, and then on the adjacent property where they said they put a fence up and they haven't done it.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a split rail fence there. You're right. There's some, yeah, the fence can be put in at any time. So that's not even an issue. Yeah, exactly. So it's the fence and plantings. And actually, we should see where they are with getting us an as-built plan on the structure, etc. add that to. And that's a piece of time to talk about.
Okay. Paul, you had something?
Yeah, I was a bit late connecting into the Zoom tonight. I was just wondering on the Plymouth, if there were Plymouth updates, especially regarding, the reservation terrace area, the core bags and the posts and the bids for dredging.
Well, I can tell you that the bid for dredging has not gone out yet. It's not gone out to bid yet, unfortunately, from the Army Corps, and it really should have by now. It was anticipated to go out in March. It's been now May, so it's been held up for a few different reasons. It's bad news. I'm hoping that they can still get it done and that they have confidence that they can, because so that it can start on time in the fall. But I can't make. I don't have any information on when that is going to go out to bid. I can tell you though that there is a MRBA meeting on June 10th, which is a Friday at 10 a.m. And I believe now Joe told me it's at Peta Hall, or David said it's at Peta Hall. So you can go to that, and I'm sure it will be the main topic of discussion at that meeting, and we'll know a lot more by then. But I haven't heard anything in terms of the schedule. And Reservation Terrace continues to get beat up by storms, erosion. I was out there last week, and it just looks worse. The elevation of the beach is significantly lower. And the erosion is really hitting harder at around 77th Street than it had in the past. So, yeah.
It was just amazing how the water just jumped over the bags and tore up what was behind the bags. I just found that amazing. And they're just sitting there, and it just went up and over.
Yeah. Is there being any work to repair those posts that were misplaced and rebury the core bags?
There's been discussion about it. There's been some email conversations around what to do, whether or not to put more posts in, cover the bags with sand, combination. I've been in some email exchanges with Anders at GZA in the mayor's office, but I don't know if they've had further discussions that I haven't been part of. So I'll try to get an update on that for you.
And
Joe, just one thing before we close, we never did get around to approving the minutes.
Right, that's what I was about to bring up. I'm glad Paul said he was late, because I forgot that we didn't do that. So let's go over the meeting minutes of April 19th, 2022. Do we have any changes or suggestions? I'll take that as a no.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Roll call, Paul Healy,
Dane.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshall,
My unmute button wasn't working, so I had to go
So-
click
so-
the whole thing. Sorry about that. Yes, a yes.
Your answer is yes, good. David Vine,
Another abstain.
Carol Wagon,
Say yes.
and I'll say yes. That was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. All right, anything else?
Looks like the Celtics decided to show up for this series, and they're up by 25 points at the half.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yay.
Hey, it's a good lead at the half.
That game the other night was pretty bad.
Terrible, terrible, terrible. But anyway, I'm gonna go turn it on if we're adjourning.
Well, I need a motion first.
motion to adjourn.
Right.
Second,
Night,
I
everyone.
second. Roll call, Paul Healy,
Aye.
Steve Moore,
Yes.
Dan Warshall,
Yes.
David Vine,
Yes.
Carol Wagon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. See you on Monday.
Night,
Yep.
everyone.
Bye, everybody. Have a good
Bye.
week.